In this lecture, I'm going to now shift away from arguments to a certain degree. That is, I'm going to presuppose that you followed the previous lectures on arguments. So have a look at those, because I'm going to simply assume that you understand now what an argument is, what validity and all those terms that I discussed previously. I want to build on that now and look at what I had mentioned in the towards the end, I think, of the last lecture on arguments. That is the notion of a fallacy. All right, so that's the topic of this lecture set. We're looking at critical thinking now with respect to fallacies. Now, fallacies have been, shall we say, known about for a long time. One of the original thinkers of the Western philosophical tradition, Aristotle, we're looking at a couple thousand years ago, and Aristotle has a writing called De Sophisticus Elenchus. That's in Latin, of course. He would have used a Greek term, but it's come down to us with often used with a Latin title. But it's sophistical refutations, and he discusses fallacies. Now, in a nutshell, fallacies really can be thought of as counterfeit arguments. They're arguments that tend to look pretty good. They are appealing, and yet at the same time they're deeply problematic. However, one of the problems about fallacies that we're going to talk about is that they're not always misplaced. They're not always the wrong thing to try and engage in. So as I said previously about arguments, good, bad, sound, invalid, valid, and all that, you have to keep your wits about you. There's no just little checklist that you can go through and check off the boxes and say, yeah, that's a good argument, or that's a great argument, or that's a fallacy and it's wrong to use it. No, you're always having to engage in critical thinking. So you can't really get away from it, but I'm trying to give you some tools that can make you better at doing it. So you're not really guessing. You can reason your way through whether or not something is a good argument or not, or whether it should be accepted maybe in this circumstance and not accepted in other circumstances. So once again, keep your wits about you, and here we go. Now, the reading is from the Inference and Persuasion book, so have a look at the link pages 130 to 35, chapter 8, the traditional fallacies. And in the readings, we discuss 5 of them. Petitio praecipi, which is begging the question. Argument ad verecundiam, argument from authority. Argument ad ignorantiam, argument from ignorance. Fallacies also involve appeals to emotion. And finally, argument ad hominem, against the man or against the person. So we'll look at that today as well. And then I'm going to throw in a few more, because Aristotle talked about 13 of these things, but there's plenty more. Some books that devote themselves entirely to fallacy, list at least 100 or more. I'm not really interested in having you memorize lists and lists of these things. People used to do that, but it's good to know a few of them, because some of them are just really common, and they're often used in newspapers and a variety of places. And it's easy to use them yourself and think you're providing a good argument when it probably is not the case, or at least it's very dubious whether or not you're using an argument that could be a fallacy and you're using it appropriately or in an appropriate context. Lots to think about. Okay, so in addition to those 5, I want to look at a few more, which will bring us up to 10 of these things. And again, there could be a lot more. So ad populum, sort of an appeal to popularity. You see those all the time. Amphibole, that's sort of a misleading use of sentences or ambiguous use of sentences. Equivocation, changing words as you go along in an argument. Another one is the problem of the false cause, right? Very common one. Easy to use, easy to get tricked by it, and easy to use, that is, you think you're providing a good causal argument, and you could even be fooling yourself. And then last, but certainly not least, is the problem of the false dichotomy. Basically, when you present, well, there's only 2 options, you better pick one, and there could be a variety of options. So sort of arbitrarily slimming down the options. Okay, so let's have a look at these fallacies in a little more detail.